past year, throwing for 2,100 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. He's got 3 years of eligibility remaining. They also added another defensive lineman in Western Michigan's Corey Walker. He's got 1 year of eligibility left. In total, Wisconsin has added 5 guys from the portal so far. Turning to the Packers, they're getting some time off after going into Seattle and winning for the first time since 2008 last night. A big part of the story was the play of the defense, which racked up 7 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions. 1 sack and 1 interception belonged to Edgerrin Cooper. It was his first game in a month due to injury. Got a game ball from Coach Matt LaFleur.
He's just a hell of a player. I think Half does a great job of putting him in positions to have success. And it's been fun to watch and witness his growth. I think Campanelli does a hell of a job with that whole room. Those guys have all gotten better throughout the course of the season, whether it's Quay, whether it's Eric, whether it's Isaiah. They're all improving.
Packers don't play again until next Monday when the Saints come to Lambeau Field.
Actor portrayal.
When I first looked into life insurance, I worried about the hassle. Then I found Better Life. Their simplified issue whole life coverage plans mean no medical exam. I found a plan that fit my budget, and now my final expenses are covered. Plus, I get Better Life member benefits at no extra cost. That's definitely better.
Better Life Insurance, where better means belonging. Call 888-488-4136. Insurance issued by Better Life Insurance Company. Terms and conditions apply. Member benefits are subject to change. Contact a licensed agent for details.
Well, the Bucks going to look to win the NBA Cup tomorrow when they face off against Oklahoma City out in Las Vegas. This is just the second year of the in-season tournament. Milwaukee lost the semis last year. And Wisconsin's players getting the week off for finals return to action on Sunday against Detroit Mercy. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil, Print.
Shotgun set back to his right, takes the snap, everybody out for pass, throws the middle, intercepted, and coming back is Edgerrin Cooper, inside the 35 to the number 30, down he goes, near the 26-yard line, and there is your dagger, delivered by the rookie, Edgerrin Cooper.
Playing the underneath coverage, reading the quarterback's eyes, see the ball, get the ball.
We're in a really good spot. I think we got to do the same thing we've talked about all season, just take it one game at a time and finish the season off and, be where we want to be for playoffs. Keep pushing each other, find ways to get these wins to end the season off. But I like where we're at.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
This is my second show of the day today. I was in for Bill earlier because he's a little under the weather, although he toughed through the Green and Gold postgame show last night. So mad respect to Bill. Hopefully he'll be back tomorrow. And if not, whatever, I'll do another show. Not the end of the world. I'm sitting in the studio anyways. What's the difference? But I did Bill's show earlier today. So there's going to be some repeated material. But what I was thinking about this afternoon is like, how comedians, they'll do, 2 shows a night. They'll do an early show and a late show, and then they'll come back the next day and do, shows at the same club. Really get their material tight. So a comedian, they might have their notebook and which jokes worked, this didn't play. I got to change this word. It's like, well, the bit about me taking the wrong pill on the airplane, like that crushed. But the joke about the Pride Parade, that didn't hit, so well. Maybe back off a little bit on that. So that's how comedians approach their craft. I'm doing the same thing. It's like, yeah, the joke, the segment about the final 2 minutes of the first half, we got to tighten that up. That's not an 8-minute segment. That's a 4-minute thing. But the segment about Edgerrin Cooper, now that played, the Edgerrin Cooper stuff, we're gonna revisit that. Just tightening up my material today. Thank God the Packers won last night. Thank God. I don't want to spend 6 hours today talking about a loss. It would have sucked because you lose to the Lions twice. The Lions are awesome. No one's disputing that. Okay, you lose to the Vikings. Plus, Jordan Love was coming back from the injury. All right. Lose to the Eagles week 1 in Brazil. Weird game against an awesome roster. No big deal. You lose to the Seahawks on the road. Now, if I really want to be negative, and sports fans are never negative on the internet or on sports talk radio, right? Now now there's a pattern emerging. Well, really, your only wins are against the AFC South. And geez, the Niners had Joe Schmo playing quarterback. Like, just thank God they won. I wouldn't want to be doing the alternative today. It'd be a long 6 hours. That would have sucked today. So I'm glad the Packers won. I think it's their best win of the year. And that's kind of what we talked about to wrap up the show last Friday. I said, I don't think there's a scenario in which the Packers win on Sunday night in Seattle. And we come away from that win thinking it's anything but their best win of the year. It could have been better. They had a couple opportunities. Coaches like saying ops, so I like using the football lingo. A couple ops in the red area they missed out on. But big picture, I think that's their best win of the year. That's where I'd like to start tonight. I'd like to start with the positive. Headline, Packers win in Seattle, smaller font. Not probably. They get their signature. Finally, their signature. I don't know. I don't write headlines. Okay. I do radio, but that's where I'd like to start. And of course, we can nitpick and we could talk about certain things that concern us, but I'd like to start positively. Again, this is hour number 5 for me today. I think if we didn't at least keep that overwhelming sense of positivity, I probably would have come down with an illness and left early today. And by the way, that air quotes, I'm not saying that Bill's definitely sick. I'm just saying I could have been like, I have an awful headache. I'm going to rerun some segments tonight from Bill's show earlier today. This is the Wisco Sports Show. I'm rambling. My name is Grant Bills. I hope you had an excellent weekend. Nice to watch football yesterday. Some awesome games at 3:30. And then, when your team plays on Sunday Night Football, it can really ruin your Monday morning if they lose. Luckily, they won. So I got to go to bed happy. I got to wake up excited to seize the day, excited to talk about what I believe to be the Packers' biggest win of the year. So that's where I'd like to start. 608-321-1670 is the number to text and call. I love Mondays after a Packer game because everyone's got something to say, so we're going to be working the phones hot and heavy. No guests per se tonight, but I do have an interview that I conducted earlier on Bill's show with Eric Baranczyk, a voice who I don't think we've had 4 to 6 in the evening show. And I thought it was just A-grade material. I thought, not to pat myself on the back, I thought I conducted an excellent interview, and Eric provided just outstanding bits of information. He breaks down the film. He's an X's and O's guy. He does a podcast with Pete Doherty, also at the Press Gazette, called After Further Review. It's excellent. And we really got into some nuts and bolts of the Packers running game and some of the perimeter stuff that Matt LaFleur was dialing up for Jaden Reed in the third quarter, and then Edgerrin Cooper as well. Excellent material from Eric Baranczyk. I'm going to play that interview at some point. We'll see how the show goes. It's kind of like when you bring food, you pack your lunch for work and you're like, I'll get to it whenever I need a break. I'll get to okay. So that interview is there. We're going to hear it. And it's great. It's excellent. But if you were listening to Bill's show earlier today, you might have already caught it. But second time. It's good the second time. We watch our favorite movies more than once. It's a good interview. Again, 608-321-1670. I can begin the show already. So Friday night, I left my prevailing thought. The final thing I remember talking about when I left on Friday is I don't think the Packers can win on Sunday without us coming away thinking that's the best win of the year, which was my way of saying this is a quality opponent, a tough place to play, a team that's played very, very well the last couple weeks, a head coach that's very, very, very sharp defensively. He's not getting all the credit that some of the young offensive minds in the league, McVay, Shanahan at times, LaFleur, Ben Johnson, he's not getting the coverage. He's not getting the credit that the young offensive minds are getting, but outstanding defensive schemer, play caller, head coach. This will be a tough game for the Packers to go to win. And I realize the Packers were favored, but still, I picked the Seahawks. Bill picked the Seahawks when we did picks last week. I'm like, man, this is going to be a tough win for the Packers to go and get. So instead of being all negative on Friday and saying, I don't know, I don't think the Packers can do it, I think the Seahawks are going to get them. Instead, I took a positive spin. I said, if they win this game, I think it's their best win of the season. And I know the Packers offense kind of stalled out in the third quarter, and there were some missed opportunities, some missed ops. But missed ops aside, and third quarter slowdown, let's call it, aside, I still think that's an awesome win. And I think it's an awesome win because of what happened in the first quarter especially, but also in the second quarter as well. And allow me to explain. So the Packers go to Seattle. Seattle's won 4 in a row. Geno Smith's playing really good ball. They've been running the ball. Mike McDonald's really got that defense dialed in. The Packers have not won in Seattle, I believe, since 2007, 2008. I can't remember which year. Zach mentioned it to me earlier today, our sports director, Zach Heilprin. So these are all the things the Packers are up against, right? Packers go out there, and from the rip, from the first possession of the game, the first time they possess the ball, they take the opening kickoff, they drive it down, stuff it right down the Seahawks' throat, punch it into the end zone. It's 7-0. And we're at home thinking, hell yeah, let's go. Then the defense gets a stop. Then the offense gets the ball again, drives it down the field, stuffs it down their throat, 14-0. And we're like, oh yeah. Like the Vince McMahon meme, like just progressively getting more happier and happier, more psyched and more psyched. The Packers walked into one of the toughest road environments in the NFL in a game that I certainly didn't think they were drawing dead, but I thought the Seahawks were going to get them. And they carried this approach, this aura of Seahawks, a nice season. Okay. Mike McDonald, a nice young coach. Seems like he made a good hire. And I know you guys are in the playoff race. You're going to win 9 or 10 games maybe, and that'll probably be good enough. But we play in the NFC North, right? We've been getting in these 10-round wars with Detroit. We've been battling the Vikings. We've battled the Eagles. The winning percentage of the teams that have beat us is historically high. We are operating on a higher level than you. We have more talent than you. Our coach is more experienced than you. Our quarterback is better than your quarterback. Watch this. They waltzed in with the idea that we are the better team, we're the more talented team, we're the more battle-tested team, we're the better coach team, and we are here to shove it up your rear end. We're not here to fart around. We're not here to leave any questions of, yeah, the Packers are great, but who have they played? They haven't beaten any great teams. They haven't gone on the road and won in some hostile environment. They've lost in Detroit. They lost in Brazil to Philly, right? Who have they beaten on the road? They went to Tennessee. They went to Jacksonville. What does that mean, right? They played Miami and San Francisco, but that was at home, and the Niners didn't have their starting quarterback. The Packers walked in last night and said, we are better. We know we are better. Now, watch. We will show everyone how much better we are. And that air of confidence, that approach, that command from the opening kickoff is something that was so important. It was so important for me to see that. Because if the season continues the way that it's continuing, and I still think I know Detroit suffered 2 more injuries last night and into today. Aleem McNeil's out for the year. David Montgomery's out for the year. Carlton Davis broke his jaw. Like, they are beat to shreds. And maybe, just maybe, Detroit really struggles these final couple weeks because of the injuries. I don't think they will, because I think they're awesome, and I think they're coached well, and I still think they're going to win games and win this division. So let's just assume, for the purposes of this conversation, Detroit wins the division, and Green Bay and Minnesota are duking it out for seeding, and they're both going to be wild cards. Whether the Packers or the Vikings end up with a better seed, it doesn't really matter to me all that much. It appears that the Packers are on a wild card trajectory, which means super wild card weekend, they're going to go to Tampa. They're going to go to Los Angeles to play the Rams, or maybe they end up going back out to Seattle to play the Seahawks. Those seem like likely candidates and likely destinations, because regardless of the Packers' record, they will be going on the road. They're not a division champ, so they will be going on the road. Wildcard weekend, the Packers are walking into a matchup and walking into an environment pretty similar to last night, maybe identical to last night. There's a chance they could go back to Seattle depending on how the West settles up. But if not Seattle, they'll be going to SoFi to play the Rams, or they'll be going to Tampa to play the Buccaneers. And I would imagine, depending on what happens the next couple of weeks, assuming nothing crazy happens, the Packers, like last night, will be favored in that wild card game. But based on how the Rams have played recently, and based on how the Bucs have played recently, there will be people going into that wild card game thinking, yeah, man, the Packers are great. They got to go on the road? They can play Tampa? You can't run on Tampa. Look at how well Baker's playing. Mike Evans, that guy, he's a sneaky Hall of Famer. I think the Bucs are going to win this game. Like I felt. That's kind of what I was thinking going into last night's game. Or out to Los Angeles. Packers have had a great season. Really, really good. What a franchise. But L.A., Stafford, Kupp, Nakua, McVay. It's well coached. They're going on the road. Traveling to the West Coast, that's not easy. Traveling, 2 time zones over. People will be hyping up the idea of the Rams winning, or hyping up the idea of the Buccaneers winning, even though the Packers will be favored. Kind of similar to last night. And in that scenario, in a couple of weeks, in round number 1 in the wildcard round, the Packers are going to have to waltz into an opponent's building and lay it down the way they laid it down last night. That's important. It was important for me to see that they had that in them. To waltz in from the opening kick last night and say, yeah, I know you guys have your own nice little thing out here in the NFC West, or the Buccaneers, you've had a nice season. Baker Mayfield, Todd Bowles. That's nice. You guys are scrappy. We're better. We've played in harder games. We've played against harder teams. We have more talent. Our quarterback has more talent. Our coach is better, right? Like that will have to be exuded. The Packers can't go into a wild card game on the road and start slow. They're going to have to walk into the building and take the field on their first possession with this attitude of, we're better. We're better. And watch, we'll prove it. On the opening drive, we're going to drive down, stuff it down your throat. And then we're going to get the ball back, and then we're going to drive down the field and stuff it down your throat again. And then all of a sudden, people watching at home are thinking, God, I'm an idiot for thinking the Seahawks were going to beat this Packers team. I am a moron for thinking Baker Mayfield and Todd Bowles were going to beat Jordan Love in this offense and Matt LaFleur. I am a dope for thinking that Matthew Stafford and the Rams, who've been dealing with injuries and fighting for the, I'm a dope for thinking that they could beat this Packers team. Last night, we saw the Packers can do it last night. That was such an important, first quarter or two. And I know the third quarter wasn't perfect, and the Packers could have done a little bit more. But the Packers' approach and their ability early on to walk into a building against a lesser opponent, a game that they were favored in, however, on the road, and say, yeah, we're better. I used the example earlier on Bill's show of a college bowl game where you're getting a team from the Big Ten. And now, of course, bowl games like this don't exist anymore because we've bastardized some of these traditions because we want a playoff, which is the playoff will be fun too. But, I think of the bowl game that Paul Christ's Badgers once played PJ Fleck's Western Michigan team with Corey Davis. And I think Western Michigan was undefeated at the time, but they play in the MAC. And they're probably not as talented, and they're certainly not as battle tested. Their strength of schedule not the same. But you go into that matchup thinking, I don't know, Western Michigan had a good year. And a team like the Badgers in that scenario will be like, you know what? You guys are nice. You've had a nice season. Congrats. Nothing against you. We're from the Big Ten. We have better players. We're more battle tested. We're better, and we're gonna show it. Right? Or like the middle of the road SEC team that's matched up against the 12-0 SMU or whoever. You guys get the comparison that I'm drawing, right? The Packers are going to have to be able to do what they did last night in the first quarter, first weekend of the playoffs, when they go to Tampa or when they go to Seattle again or when they go to SoFi. And seeing them do it last night, that's such a nice feather in their cap in my point of view. Watching them do that last night was important. It's not beating Detroit. It's not beating Minnesota. They'll have another opportunity to do that. It's not beating one of the elite teams, but it's going on the road in basically the identical scenario that they'll be facing in round one of the playoffs, walking into someone's building and saying, yeah, we're favored. We're better. We've been better all year. You're not going to sneaky pull one over on us. We're going to beat you to shreds like they did to Seattle last night. And I know Packers fans were like, well, they still haven't played a 4-quarter game, and that's true. It wasn't a complete game, and that's true. But if you listen to national coverage today, if you listen to Cowherd or any of the, the NFL podcasts that all come out on Monday, everyone's saying, yeah, the Packers dominated the Seahawks last night. Because they did. They could have scored another touchdown or so. But a slump in the third quarter, to me, does not minimize what they did in the first and the second quarter, which is uber important considering they're going to have to do that if they want to win a wild card game and advance past the first weekend of the postseason. 608-321-1670. Call or text. You can comment on the live stream as well. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, at Wisco Grant. We'll continue the Wisco Sports Show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Should the Green Bay Packers be in that conversation?
Yes, they should. Definitely should. This is when we started to see it last year, when Jordan Love started to get hot and started to play good football. I mean, they have got a defense that has some great young players. That Cooper kid, Evan Williams, they're making big plays. I mean, it's running the football also with Josh Jacobs. How important is that, Wood? I mean, in terms of being at this time.
Green Bay
so
has
good.
the most diverse running game in the league. The way they're designing the things they're doing in their run game, no one's doing. And they run the football with authority. And when you're talking about a team that's going to go into the playoffs and could possibly go deep, that's a team right there in the Green Bay Packers. As long as their quarterback takes care of the football, you don't want to play the Green Bay Packers.
No.
As long as the quarterback takes care of the football, I agree. Jordan Love took care of the football. He threw some dots on those first 2 drives. That throw to Watson, I think was on the first possession, not the second, right? Oh, there's just some sick throws early on. That team came ready to play. And them coming that ready, that confident, that it seemed set on imposing their will and showing everybody, that we are that much better than the Seahawks. That's more important to me than I think anything else from this game. I didn't love the management going into halftime. We'll talk about that. The offensive slump in the third quarter, obviously we'll talk about that. But the biggest headline is that's the Packers' best win of the year, in my opinion. You don't have to agree. The second headline is that's the approach and that's the game that they're going to have to bring to Tampa or to LA or to Seattle when they eventually have to go somewhere and play a game wildcard weekend. That was really important for me to see last night. That really pleases me that they came ready to kind of flex on a lesser team, because they should feel that the Rams or the Seahawks or the Bucs are lesser teams, and the Vegas line will reflect that, just like it reflected it last night. Before we get to calls, and I want to, 608-321-1670. Next week, we're doing an Eau Claire tour. We're taking the show on the road. It's our Home for the Holidays tour, which I think has a really nice ring, personally. We're going to be in Menominee a week from tonight. I'll be broadcasting live at Kai's Chevytown. Now, if you're looking for a car, or if you're in the market for a car, or you were planning to stop in and say hello. It's not like we're going to have chairs and everything set up, but I will be broadcasting there on Monday, and it'll be nice to see Joe and Kip and everybody at Kai's. So I'm really excited to be there. But Thursday and Friday are really going to be the 2 shows. If you want to get out with other listeners and experience a live show, and I'm not going to be on stage like. I'm not going to have props. We're just going to do a normal show, but it'll be nice. We can all hang out and we can celebrate like some time off around Christmas. It'll be absolutely great. A week from Thursday, that's the 26th, we'll be at Princeton Valley. It's just off the North Crossing in Eau Claire, so not a far trip down from Halley or Chippewa Falls if you want to come down. And obviously, it's not out of Eau Claire, it's just on the north side, so a very easy trip. And then on Friday, a week from Friday, the 27th, we're going to be at Dean and Sue's in Menominee, which is right off Highway 29 on the west side. An absolute blast and a half of a place. I'm very excited for both shows. So mark that down. And if you're like, well, I'd like to come, but I've never been to a live radio. Well, then just treat it like you're coming to the bar and there's also a radio show going on and we can hang out and have some beers and have a fish fry and bring friends. Let's pack both the places. Princeton Valley on Thursday and then Dean and Sue's in Menominee on Friday. Let's fill those places up. We'll get fish, enjoy a nice cold line Kugels or 4 or 5. We'll see. I'm looking forward to next week. And both events are up on the Facebook page. So RSVP, share it. Try to get as many people to come as possible. Let's take some calls related to Packers Seahawks yesterday. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Grant, you're speaking my language because sports radio is meant to be just like a conversation at the bar.
Yeah.
So I love it.
That's what it's supposed to be. And I've had a couple people like comment or, tweet me. It's like, well, I don't know what that's like. I've never been to a radio show. It will be the normal show. I will be there and we can get food and drinks and also chat. Like I'll have to do some segments, but then on commercial breaks, we can hang out. If you want to come on the air, it's the same. It's the same thing, except it's at an actual bar cone instead of whatever this is where it feels like you and me are at the bar.
Yeah. Amen. You can't beat live and local.
Can't be. I would agree. And by the way, your voice seems a little raspy. Were you were at the game I saw on Twitter. So were you were letting the Seahawks, you were part of that loud Packers contingent there last night?
Yeah. And I got to say, as a member of Packer Nation, I cannot be more proud of the way Green Bay showed up to that game.
Cool.
I mean, overall in the stadium, I'd say 30% Packer fans. And in my section alone, I'd say probably 80% Packer fans. I mean, we took over Seattle. Anywhere you go walking around downtown on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, people would be in Packer gear, go Pack Go chants going. And, LaFleur gave the Packer fans credit in his presser saying, they helped us play better. And honestly, going into that game, I was kind of like you, a little nervous, but after getting the vibe on Friday and Saturday and Sunday in Seattle, I was like, okay, the Packers are showing up. The fans showed up. It's time for the team to show up. And those first 2 drives for the Packers offense, absolutely beautiful. Josh Jacobs, free agent signing of the decade for this team, just pounded the Seahawks. And my whole section, we were doing the, too small. The Seahawks are too small. They can't take it. We were doing that to all those fans. And last thing before you talk, the 12th man, the number 12 should be unretired for the Seahawks. They did not show up.
They should be well, and I think, Matt LaFleur giving credit to the fans. I also think the fans who were there have to give credit for the team for helping them out, because when you put together 2 long touchdown drives to begin the game, you completely suck the home crowd out of it. So while the Packers fans helped the team on the field, I think the team on the field helped the Packers fans in Seattle by completely snuffing out the Seahawks fans. Because how are the Seahawks fans supposed to be loud when the beginning of the game starts, their offense goes 3 and out and they're down 14-0? Like they had nothing to cheer for.
Yeah, exactly. It was awesome. It was just an awesome environment. And honestly, that was like an identity win for the Packers. You had Jordan Love playing clean football, Josh Jacobs with 30 touches, defense getting 2 takeaways. That is the keys to victory for this Packer team, with how they're built, how LaFleur schemes up a running game, and how Jordan Love, honestly, you don't need him to do a whole ton because, still dealing with maybe some turnover issues, but that is an identity win. And I mean, if we want to go to Badger football, we have no idea what their identity is, but last night's Packer game was an identity statement win.
Well, I think so. And I think the beginning of that game, Kona, I appreciate it. I'm glad you had fun, and thank you for bringing the noise for our team last night out in Seattle. I just, guys, I know going into halftime wasn't great, and I know the third quarter wasn't perfect, but this Packers team, if they're going to go on a run, they're going to have to go into Seattle or LA or Tampa and win a game exactly like that game. And that's exactly the way that they need to start that game. They need to go into that building. Bucks fans are fighting. Oh, yeah, we're going to knock off the Packers at home. Like, we're going to pull a sneaky upset. Rams fans thinking, yeah, I know we didn't have the perfect regular season, but this is our chance. We can win this game at home. And the Packers walk in and it's 14-0 before you can blink. Well, actually, not before you can blink, because they possessed the ball forever and just slowed the game down to a crawl. So the home fans are sitting there twiddling their thumbs, waiting for their chance to score. Right? Like, that's the approach. That's the start. That's the game that the Packers are going to have to bring in an eventual road wildcard game. And the fact that they showed that they can do it last night, and they made it look confident and really easy. Like, that's I'm over the moon about this win. And I know it wasn't perfect, but I just think this win is so meaningful for the next couple of weeks and for their playoff prospects, because they're going to have to go on the road and win a game like that. 608-321-1670. Another call before we take a break. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Grant, what did you have for breakfast this morning, and what did you mix into your Wheaties?
This morning I had oatmeal with a dash of positivity, Vagabond John, and a little sprinkle of optimism. Could you tell by how I'm talking about this game today?
You're bringing it, man. I'm sitting here cooking up my hot honey chicken salad.
Ooh.
You know, frying up the chicken, adding in the holy trifecta of soy sauce, rice vinegar, and hot honey into the chicken, and you toss it right into the salad. It's freaking amazing. If you haven't done that before, go ahead and do that right now. But I'm sitting here looking at this. I'm like, someone cooked here. Someone cooked listening to that intro, because I think that is exactly how Packer fans should be thinking about this win, right? I think, Friday I called in with a little bit of pat of pessimism, thinking, if we do lose this, guys, playoffs aren't guaranteed. This team could be pretenders. And I think the Packers absolutely planted their flag, and they said, we are Super Bowl contenders. Remove pretender from our name. That is a Super Bowl contending team. When you can play sloppy football for, I would argue, maybe a half, right, and still comfortably coast to a win, and I know their quarterback was out, but you said it right there, in the opening segment. They never allowed that game really to be in doubt.
No.
I know Packers fans were a little nervous in the third quarter, early fourth quarter.
I think if that game was in Arizona, or if it wasn't in Seattle, if that exact game took place in any other stadium, I don't think Packers fans would have been as nervous. I think that was an element in play last night, fairly. But I just, as we step away, it's like, guys, that game probably wasn't as close as it felt because of it being in Seattle and all the previous memories we have there.
And the final touchdown, just putting their foot to the throat of the Seattle Seahawks and said, we know you're down. We know your guys hurt. Unfortunate for Geno Smith, right? I do like the Seahawks. I think they're a fun team, fun coach, like you said. But we don't care, right? We're going to put the foot on the throat. Maybe we're learning a little bit from the Dan Campbell-led Lions. And wow, is it a sad year to be a Lions fan, right? How much hype could you possibly have? Just have every player that's sad. But yeah, back to the Pack. Can't be, I don't think you can be too high on this win, right? I think a lot of questions were answered. Romeo Dobbs, thank you very much. Rashawn Gary, thank you very much. Defensive line, where the hell have you been? Welcome to the party. This team is on a roll, Grant, and we're going to carry this right through. I said it on Friday. I'm worried about a 1-3 ending. Screw that. We're not losing another game. Bring home the Lombardi. Let's go. Victory Monday.
Well, that's about as positive of a call as I've heard from Vagabond John in a long time. But guys, I do think that win is that important. I think it sets the Packers up for a game at home against the Saints. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, let's smash this team at home. Now, all of a sudden, Monday night's game against the Saints isn't, well, we got to get right against the lesser. I mean, we got to get this game. Instead of feeling that way, it's let's pound this team of losers with a toilet clogging interim head coach and try to get all the momentum on our side going into Minnesota, right? Like Minnesota, who, by the way, will be on a short week. Well, I guess no, they'll be on a short week for next week. So I'm thinking ahead because Minnesota plays tonight. I just think last night's win was so important. And look, if they had won 17-16, I still think it would have been a great win. I still think it would have been their best win of the year. Guys, they won by 17 points. If I would have told you on Friday the Packers are going to win 30-13, you all would have said, that is friggin' sweet. Yes, that is excellent. But because we saw them, because we got visions of like 42-10 in our eyes, 30-13 doesn't seem so great. Look, there's issues. There's things that need to be cleaned up. There's still little areas where the team can mature. LaFleur talked about it in his presser. So did Jordan Love. This is a very self-aware team. They know that there are areas to still improve. But I think this is such an important result. And those first 2 quarters gave me so much confidence that I can trust this team going to Tampa or going to LA in the wild card round, where it feels like, oh, I know the Packers are favored, but this seems like a no, because the Packers showed us last night that they can walk into that environment and put their stamp on the game and on a lesser opponent. And that's important to me. Good call, Vagabond John. I think he was drunk. I don't think he was making a salad. I think he was making his 3rd or 4th cocktail. It's about as positive as I've ever heard him. Probably because we didn't talk Badgers football. 608-321-1670. Ron, hold. I promise I'll get to you right after this break.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
You are so lucky to be a Packer fan. I mean, seriously, this has been going on. Like, no matter what age group you're in, if you're 50, it's basically your whole life. If you're my age, basically your whole life. If you're 20, it's all you know. If you're 28, all you know. You have to be like 60 to really, truly probably remember like the tough times in the 70s and 80s. Other than that, like your football life is fucking incredible.
The man makes some interesting points. It's John Middlecoff from his podcast today. I have become a John Middlecoff, maybe not a P1. Maybe I don't listen every day, but the man's just always putting out content. What am I supposed to do? Not listen to it? Especially the day after my team wins. I do listen to Cowherd Middlecoff every Sunday. It's like my Simmons and Rosillo, but for the NFL. It's like Simmons and Rosillo if the sport meant anything. And the hosts weren't douchebags. So I guess it's nothing like Simmons and Rosillo. It's hour number 5 of radio. I just don't care. I do like Howard Middlecoff a lot, but they normally do their podcast before the Sunday night game. So I had to listen to Middlecoff individually to get his take on the Packer game. And I tell you what, Packers fans, I know a lot of us were kind of frustrated with how the first half ended, and that's what I want to talk about next. And I know a lot of us were frustrated with the slog of the third quarter. The Packers offense just couldn't really get it going after halftime. But then you zoom out and you listen to what everyone else has to say about our team. And right or wrong, I'm not saying that, we're right or wrong to hyper-focus on what didn't go right. But you listen to people who watch this team and who watch the league from 10,000 feet, and they're like, damn, the Packers are good. They just went to Seattle and stomped them. I don't know, it wasn't perfect in the third quarter, but don't you think the Packers kind of they kind of showed up and won the game in the first 2 quarters with how ready they were to play, how dead set they were on flexing their muscles, right? How they quieted the crowd. And Packers fans, I know, well, that's not going to be enough against Detroit. But that's not going to be enough against the best teams. Obviously, yes. They started slow against Detroit. They played great the rest of the game. It wasn't enough. They started slow against Minnesota, played great the rest of the game. It wasn't enough. Obviously, you need a more complete game to beat the best teams in the world. Last night, they weren't playing one of the best teams in the world. They were playing a very solid Seattle team. And then Geno gets hurt, which made their path to victory a little bit easier. But let's not act like they weren't up 20-3 before Geno left the game. Let's not act like they hadn't completely snuffed the home crowd out of it before Geno left the game, right? So, yeah, we're going to nitpick. That's what Sports Talk Radio is for. I want to talk about that sequence going into halftime, and we can talk about the third quarter too. But you listen to other people who don't just cover the Packers, they cover everything. They're like, damn, that was a really impressive game by the Packers. So that's the headline today. The headline is that's the best Packers win of the year. Now, of course, we're going to talk about the little things, but I don't want to lose. Keep our eye on the ball today, at least until 6 o'clock. Like that was an excellent win. And we deserve to celebrate a little bit because I wasn't so sure that they were going to win that game. Okay, so for the next month or so, maybe the Vikings game aside, the Vikings game is kind of in its own class because that's an elite team or a team that's at least on the level of the Packers, probably above. We'll see how they look against the Bears tonight, but I expect they'll win that game. I don't really have a football reason to believe otherwise. Maybe it just gets weird, but there's no real football reason, coaching reason, talent reason, quarterback reason. There's no reason to believe that the Vikings shouldn't win tonight, okay? So set the Vikings game aside. The Packers have a game against the Saints on Monday Night Football, and then they host the Bears in Week 18. I will be watching at least those two games with the playoffs in mind, right? Is this a team that's doing ABC? Is this a team that's avoiding XYZ, right? The things that need to be done to win playoff games, avoiding the things that must be avoided in order to avoid losing playoff games, those types of things, right? And last night was no different, especially once they went up big. It's like, okay, huge checked box, showed up against a lesser opponent, stomped your foot down immediately. Okay, let's talk about situational football. Situational football, very important, especially in playoff games against good teams, especially on the road. Well, the last couple minutes going into halftime wasn't great. And it reminded me of the Niners game a couple of weeks ago when Jordan Love threw that perfect ball, pillowy ball, right into Christian Watson's hands. And he dropped it. It's like, oh. But then it's 2nd and 10. And the Packers still have multiple timeouts. And they're midfield. It's like great opportunity to get a field goal going into halftime. And then Jordan Love uncorks a bomb to Bo Melton. Not even close. Uncorks a bomb to Christian Watson. Not even close. It's like, what did we were at midfield, 2 timeouts. No reason that this ball needs to be punted back to San Francisco. No reason that this half shouldn't end with a Brandon McManus field goal attempt, right? And we talked about that sequence the next day. I remember it very clearly. I said, that's the type of thing that loses you a playoff game. That's the type of thing that happens going into halftime that we feel sick to our stomach about. And then we end up losing the game in the second half. And we talk about it after the game saying, oh my God, that sequence before half, it killed us. Right? That's the kind of thing that loses you a playoff game. I think that sequence going into halftime last night, and I tweeted it last night, that's the kind of thing that loses you a playoff game. So to recap, the Packers got the ball with 2 minutes and 54 seconds left and 2 timeouts. Now, they did have it on their own 13-yard line, so they were backed up. 14-yard line. But they were backed up, okay? But still, 2 minutes, 54 seconds is a ton of time. They run Josh Jacobs up the middle. That takes about 20 seconds off. Seattle takes the timeout, okay? Because they're thinking, well, we might get the ball back. Then Jordan Love gets him to jump off sides, uncorks that bomb to Tucker Kraft. He pulls it down. That's a gain of about 25 yards. They get up to the 40-yard line, Green Bay's 40-yard line. So they really need to go about another 20 yards to get a field goal attempt in 2 minutes and 18 seconds. So they have the 2-minute warning and 2 timeouts. All the time in the world. It's so much time, okay? The ball runs down to the 2-minute warning. And from the 2-minute warning, they do this. Josh Jacobs run up the middle for 9 yards. That takes him to midfield. Josh Jacobs run up the middle for 8 yards. That takes him to the Seattle 45. They let the clock go from 1:36 to 1:54 before throwing it left to Jaden Reed for only 3 yards, which sets up a 2nd and 7. So they're now on the Seattle 37. That's not really it's not really a great spot. There's 16 seconds left. God, Green Bay takes a timeout. With 10 seconds left, they throw a bomb to Romeo Doubs, which takes it down to 4 seconds, but they get the PI, which puts them into field goal range. They let so much time run off, and a majority of that time ran off. You could argue all of that time ran off before the Packers were comfortably in field goal position. And I tweeted last night. I'll go read you directly the tweet. I will reference my Twitter page, @WiscoGrant. I tweeted last night. That's the kind of pre-halftime sequence that loses you a playoff game. And some of the replies. These are dumb takes. Says, disagree. You avoid a potential turnover and allowing Seattle to double up and instead go up 3. Very smart football. AJ says, you're playing for 3. Had plenty of time. T-Bone says, at a minimum, they wasted 20 seconds, which is easily pass plays. Everything matters in playoff games. He's actually agreeing with me. John says, you're an idiot. Take the points. They're dominating this game. Bill says, how are you bitching about going up 3 scores? It would make a 2-score game a 2-score game. If it would make a 2-score game a 2-score game, then fine, but you always take the points there. He's saying you go from a 2-score game to a 3-score game. You idiots! A field goal is great. I was thrilled that they got a field goal. They were lucky to get a field goal. The only reason they got the field goal was because they got like a 35-yard pass interference. The field goal was excellent. The outcome was fine. No problem going for 3 there. No problem running the clock down to make sure Seattle doesn't get the ball back. But you run the clock down once you're in comfortable field goal range, not at midfield. I got all these dopes in my mentions thinking, whoa, what did you want them to do? Go for it? The field goal is fine. No, the field goal was great. I would have liked them to not do so much dicking around before they were in field goal range. They were lucky to get that field goal attempt off. And last night it didn't matter. But in a playoff game, that will matter. And that's the second time in now 3 weeks that they've kind of mismanaged an end of the half situation. That will kill you. Not against Seattle, at least last night. Not against San Francisco and Brock Purdy and Trent Williams and Nick Bosa aren't playing. But on the road against the Rams, that'll beat you. Or on the road against the Bucs, that could beat you. So I would like that to be the last time this season that Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love team up to end the half in an absolute boneheaded, hammer-headed way. That's all I'm saying. 608-321-1670. Let's take a call, then we'll take a break. Let's go Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Tony from Texas, Grant.
Hey, Tony.
Can we say dicking around on the airwaves?
I'm not sure. But now we've said it twice, so I hope so.
Speaking of dicking around, Matt LaFleur, 0 for 6 on challenges.
Yeah.
I've got a better chance for a sportsman double, Grant. Look it up on Urban Dictionary than Matt LaFleur had of winning that challenge yesterday.
I don't know.
Stop the challenges, Matt. These are emotional challenges. They need those timeouts in big games. Stupid. Second half. Stop doing the conservative nonsense. Play these games like they're a playoff. I know they're going to win the game. They're not going to. This wasn't 2014. They're going to win the game. But what I want to see is, can they come up with these big plays in big situations? And to play to Dobbs at the end, that was a big play. That was something that you need to do to win in a playoff game. 4th and 1, they do the run. I didn't think it was the worst call, but still, where's the creativity? Where's the movement? It was just kind of stagnant, you know?
So fine. They got Jordan Love under center and gave it to their star running back, and they got stuffed. Okay, so we can say, well, where's the creativity? That's so predictable. Okay, but if they have Jordan Love in the shotgun and they do some fake and twist and misdirection and they get stuffed, well, what are you doing? You're getting cute. You're out there. You're trying to outthink the room. Just hand the ball to Josh Jacobs. Or if you pass the ball, you need a yard. Why are you throwing the ball? You got Josh Jacobs. So they got stuffed, and the results sucked. But
hey, we got a great line, great running back. This is not the '92 Cowboys. This isn't Emmitt Smith and those 5 Pro Bowlers there. Good team, yes. Hey, so Jordan Love and the passes, he had a very good game. He's trending in the right direction. In the playoffs, he's going to have to win us a game, a la like Patrick Mahomes, like Buffalo's guy. What's his name? I'm having a brain freeze.
Josh Allen.
Josh Allen is single-handedly taking that team on his back. So he's got to be able to do that. It's not necessary, but he's going to need to do that. So, and really quickly, Grant, hey, Mike McCarthy's getting some steam down here, like as potentially keeping his job.
Mm-hmm.
So props to Mike, and then props to Aaron Rodgers and Devontae going straight 2014 yesterday. That was fun to watch.
It was kind of fun. Tip of the cap to Aaron Rodgers, and why don't we wrap up the hour? Let's come back. Tony and I Googled what a sportsman's double is. I don't know that the odds are, well, I feel like if you set your mind to it, Tony, you could probably, there's a lot of people out there with a lot of different tastes, let's say. So you might be able to pull that off before Matt LaFleur wins the next challenge. I got an email about Matt LaFleur's challenges for the Monday mailbag coming up at 5:50. So if you have a question, please submit it. Send it to me via email, grantbills21@gmail.com. Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams did look pretty good yesterday. Let's talk about, for a couple minutes when we come back, some other NFL stories before kind of resetting things and getting back to the Packers at 5 o'clock.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Wisco Sports Show, a couple minutes here before we get an update from Zach Heilprin. 5:15, you're going to hear from Eric Baranczyk, Green Bay Press Gazette. I conducted an interview with him earlier today on the Bill Michaels Show. He breaks down the film, the All-22, so we got real nutty and boldy, let's say, X's and O's centric on what we saw from the Packers offense. Then a little on Edgerrin Cooper as well, who we haven't really talked about. Awesome game from the Packers rookie linebacker. What was he, their second-round pick? One of their second-round picks, they traded up to get him, right? These things don't stick in my head the way that they do for some other people. High draft pick from the last year, let's say. Tony in Texas mentioning Aaron Rodgers before that last break. Aaron Rodgers played pretty well down the stretch yesterday. Him and Davante Adams look like vintage Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams. Rodgers is probably getting healthier. He's getting more in tune with Davante Adams. I don't know about you guys, but I am seeing narratives from certain people on Twitter. And maybe it's because I seek it out. Maybe it's because I'm like, what are Jets fans saying about Rodgers? It's a situation that interests me a lot. It's not that I'm pulling for his success or failure one way or another. I'm just like, how's it going? What do they have to think about our guy? Because we had lots of opinions about Rodgers for a long time. What are they thinking? What are their opinions about Rodgers? And I brought this up with Zach earlier today on Bill's show just after noon. So in the third hour, seen a lot of tweets where it's like Rodgers in his last 5 games, ABC touchdowns, XYZ interceptions, completion percentage up here, yards, and basically people are saying, look at his numbers. And he's supposed to be the problem? He's supposed to be the issue? I think we're trending towards Rodgers playing next year, and I hope it's with the Jets. I want another year of this. There's still content. There's still narratives to come out of this. This isn't dead yet. We can squeeze more juice out of this lemon, I think. I hope he's back. Because Aaron Rodgers starting for the Jets next year is a whole hell of a lot more interesting than, like what if they throw a bag at Sam Darnold or something really stupid like that? You know what I mean? Or draft a rookie who stinks. Like Rodgers is better for content. There's no way in heck I would have opened Stream East yesterday to watch the Jets and the Jags finish if Aaron Rodgers wasn't playing quarterback. If it was some Mac Jones, Gardner Minshew commented, like, no way. Who cares? But Aaron Rodgers? Box office. I kind of want to watch that. I'm kind of hoping the Jets bring him back for another year. I don't know if he has any good football left to play. I know they're not contending with him, but it'd be entertaining. I'll watch. Couple more NFL thoughts, couple more games yesterday. We'll get back into the Packers as well. Plus, Eric Baranczyk, Green Bay Press Gazette, coming up in hour number 2.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, it's a victory Monday for the Packers. That's after they went on the road last night, beat the Seahawks in Seattle for the first time since 2008. It was arguably their best win of the season, as Seattle was in first place in the NFC West going into the night, which Matt LaFleur was asked if it showed that they were ready for a deep run in the playoffs.
We'll see. We're going to take it one game at a time. That's just the mindset that we've always had here, and I still think there's a lot to improve upon. And myself included, obviously. That's kind of the mindset that we have, is just how can we get better? And I think you got to keep pushing that envelope and trying to strive to reach your full potential.
LaFleur and the Packers going to get an extra day of the rest this week as they don't play again until next Monday night against the Saints at Lambeau Field. A win there would clinch a playoff spot. Turning to the Badgers, they've added a couple more players from the transfer portal, including a quarterback. That's Danny O'Neal from San Diego State. As a true freshman, he threw for 2,100 yards, 12 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Also added another defensive defensive lineman, and Corey Walker from Western Michigan. He's got 1 year of eligibility remaining. In total, Wisconsin has added 5 players so far from the portal.
Actor portrayal.
When I first looked into life insurance, I worried about the hassle. Then I found Better Life. Their simplified issue whole life coverage plans mean no medical exam. I found a plan that fit my budget, and now my final expenses are covered. Plus, I get Better Life member benefits at no extra cost. That's definitely better.
Better Life Insurance, where better means belonging. Call 888-488-4136. Insurance issued by Better Life Insurance Company. Terms and conditions apply. Member benefits are subject to change. Contact a licensed agent for details.
Well, the Bucks are still in Las Vegas. It's where they're going to take on Oklahoma City tomorrow in the championship game of the NBA Cup. Milwaukee beat Atlanta to get there. Thunder took out the Rockets. And the Wisconsin basketball team off until Sunday when they're going to face Detroit Mercy. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil, Print.
Shotgun set back to his right, takes the snap, everybody out for pass, throw the middle, intercepted, and coming back is Edgerrin Cooper, inside the 35 to the number 30, down he goes, near the 26-yard line, and there is your dagger, delivered by the rookie, Edgerrin Cooper.
Playing the underneath coverage, reading the quarterback's eyes, see the ball, get the ball.
We're in a really good spot. I think we got to do the same thing we've talked about all season. Just take it one game at a time and finish the season off, and be where we want to be for playoffs. Keep pushing each other, find ways to get these wins to end the season off. But I like where we're at.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
Still plenty of time to talk Packers. Probably should talk a little bit about Edgerrin Cooper. I'm going to talk about Edgerrin Cooper coming up in just a little bit. Eric Baranczyk, the Green Bay Press-Gazette, going to join us. He does the After Further Review podcast with Pete Doherty. He's the one grinding the All-22. I always joke because I think it's a little overplayed. I think it's a cliche. Like sometimes I'll listen to sports talk radio, other stations, because I keep an eye. I keep my friends close, but I keep my enemies closer. So I'll listen to other shows, and I'll hear hosts say things like, well, I think he played well. Obviously, you'll have to check the All-22. It's like you're gonna sit down and check the All-22. When are you going to do that? Where are you gonna? You have a film room at home? You're gonna sit down and all right? No. You're right. You watch the yes. You totally watch the All-22. Go ahead and tell people that. So I always say that as a joke. It's like, well, I thought Eric Stokes played okay yesterday, but obviously I'll have to check the All-22. It's like I'm not checking the All-22. I will read the breakdowns and the grades from those that do, but I'm not watching film. I watched the game last night. I'll do a little more research past that. It's good enough for me. Just some caveman stupid fan who I know I am an owner, but I don't like to, a lot of owners don't know much about football. I'm much more in the business sense of an owner. I let my football people make decisions. But in any event, Eric Baranczyk watches the All-22. You'll hear that conversation that I had earlier with him in just a little bit. Really good. We talked about the running game, some of the things that they were doing on the outside with Jaden Reed in the third quarter, which I thought was a really nice second pitch when a lot of their other offense from the first half had dried up after halftime. And we also talk about Edgerrin Cooper as well. Still time to get in your calls, though, if you have any thoughts. 608-321-1670. We also got to get to the Monday mailbag coming up at the end of the show. So send me your questions related to anything. Doesn't have to be sports. GrantBills21@gmail.com. Was talking about Aaron Rodgers for a couple minutes before the end of last hour. Did you guys see the Brock Purdy story yesterday? So it's funny how stories come out on Sunday morning before the games start. It's like, so we've collected all these reports. We're going to put it out Sunday morning because people kind of focused on football. Tom Pelissero and others reporting yesterday that Purdy's camp is expecting top of the market money. 50 plus, 55 million a year. There will be no Mr. Irrelevant discount. There will be no, coming to some sort of agreement with the Niners. Like, no. We want the whole bag. We want the entire bag. And that came out yesterday. You could only assume from Brock Purdy's camp. And the timing is interesting because Brock Purdy played a miserable game on Thursday Night Football, right? Against the Rams in the rain. Gotta have it game. And everyone walked away from that game fairly or unfairly because it was, like it was a standalone game. We're all going to react to it. Like, how can you give that guy the contract? Well, Brock Purdy's worst games this year have been getting Buffalo. They lost 35-10. In that game, he had 0 touchdowns, right? He played awful against Kansas City, had 3 interceptions in that game, no touchdowns. Ew. And then on Thursday Night Football in the rain, got to have it against the Rams. They needed to score 13 points. He couldn't do it. He had 0 touchdown, 1 interception. So in all of their games against their most premier opponents, Brock Purdy has looked awful. Punctuated by Thursday Night Football with the entire country watching, and everyone on Friday, like that was the anti-Brock Purdy day in the media on Friday. And on Sunday, all of a sudden we have reports that Brock Purdy's camp is expecting all the money, which is interesting. The Niners are going to have an interesting decision to make there. Because if I was John Lynch, I'd be like, Brock, we love you. We want to keep you. But you were Mr. Irrelevant for a reason. You're not exactly durable. And you haven't exactly performed well in the elements or against the best teams. Now, we're going to cut you some slack for this year because we realize circumstances weren't ideal. But you can't really, dude, we're not giving you $60 million a year. This is what happens in arbitration in Major League Baseball. And say what you want for what it does for the relationship between the players and the team, but they come to an accurate number, not some market-derived number, but a market dictated by performance, previous performance. Here's what you've accomplished for us. Here's what you're worth. Brock Purdy in arbitration would not get top dollar. I'm interested to see what the Niners do. We were just talking a little bit about Aaron Rodgers too. I think it's trending towards him being back next year. Maybe not with the Jets, but I hope he's back somewhere. It's fun. It's interesting. Gives us content. Oh yeah, and also Diana Rossini and others, this report was corroborated and confirmed by others, that Bill Belichick reached out to the Jets. He was desperate. Belichick was desperate to get any job, if that's true. And maybe the Jets made it up to screw with him. Maybe. I don't doubt that someone in the Jets organization told reporters that Bill Belichick asked about the job. I don't doubt that. Now, did he actually, or did the Jets make it up? I don't know. But if that's true, Bill Belichick being at UNC is kind of even more embarrassing. It's like, dude, not only did you have no NFL interest, you groveled to a team that you've made fun of forever. I don't know. That whole thing is still sticking in my craw. Belichick to UNC. I know we talked about it last week. Back to the Packers and back to your calls. 608-321-1670. It's the Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Eric on I-90.
Eric on I-90. Good evening. Your team plays tonight. I'm very excited to watch.
So am I. I think we're going to win. But guess what, Grant Bill?
What's that, Eric?
We clinched a playoff spot. We clinched a playoff spot 4 games before our season was over.
That's a pretty good year.
Would you have ever imagined?
Yeah.
Would you have ever imagined?
No. Not with Sam Darnold as your quarterback going into the year. Mm-mm.
In a very tough division. Clinched her. Pretty impressive.
You needed the Packers to win. Were you cheering for the Packers? Because if I were you, I'd be like, I'm not cheering for my rival. We're going to make the playoffs anyways. But maybe you were cheering for us last night.
No, I would. No.
Okay, good.
I was not. No, but I pretty much figured Seattle had no hope about at the end of the first quarter, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, Seattle may be a decent team, but they did not play well last night at all.
Mm-mm.
Not even when the starters were out there.
I think their head coach got pantsed a little bit. And look, Eric, you can speak to this too, but in Matt LaFleur's rookie year, there were a lot of great games, but there were 2 or 3 games where a more experienced coach just got him, right? And I think
I would agree, yeah.
I think LaFleur did that to McDonald last night. And I think O'Connell in his first year, lots of amazing games, but the 2 or 3 where it didn't work, he kind of got it handed to him by a more experienced coach. It's hard to be a rookie coach.
That's very true. That's very true. And I didn't even realize that they had a rookie head coach until I started to watch the game. I thought it was still that gum chewing
Pete Carroll.
Pete Carroll, gum chewing Pete Carroll.
That's right.
But I'm gonna just head on home now, and I'm gonna get back in the film room and reel up the old film strips.
Yeah.
Check out the old 22.
If you're going to say the old 22, I'm going to watch the old 22.
I'm going to watch the old 22 now. I'm going to have all the answers for you.
Oh, that's good.
So no, I don't have much to say. I kind of missed out last week. I was on the road.
That's okay.
I was on the road.
15, 20 seconds. Your thought going into the Survivor finale on Wednesday.
Oh boy, I don't know how to call it. This is just a mix and a mash. Just a mix and a mash of everything. I don't know how to call it. I don't know how to call it, Grant.
I mean, if Rachel makes it to the final three, I feel like it's hers.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you're right. And hey, how about these Milwaukee Bucks? Huh?
Not bad.
How about these Milwaukee Bucks?
Not bad.
They are good.
Now,
so we got a lot going for us, Grant.
We do. This is going to be a big week. And the NBA Cup tomorrow night and then the Survivor finale on Wednesday, Eric. I appreciate the call. The Bucks, this is Green and Gold Monday, unofficially. So I'll be brief with the Bucks, although I just talked about Survivor and I talked about the Jets for a couple minutes. But the Bucks handling the Hawks on Saturday. The Hawks are a team that can throw a lot of bodies at Giannis. Okongwu and Capella. Like, that's a team that has a lot of athletes that can give the Bucks problems. And they kind of, like, they looked really nice. This Bucks team is playing well. And maybe it just took a miserable start for us to appreciate the little things again. I think that's part of it. I'm enjoying Doc. I have really enjoyed the Doc experience. And I know Sixers fans or Celtics fans or Clippers fans will be like, oh, just wait till you lose the playoffs. Then tell me how much you're enjoying it. It's like, man, we've been losing in the playoffs already. Like, it's not nothing new. Or that's not anything new. Or that's nothing new. I think I misspoke there. Double negative. I'm enjoying Doc. It's been a fun team. And I like having Chris Middleton back. He's added a lot. He's added this adult presence on offense to keep the ball from sticking, to get the ball to Giannis when he needs it. It's been a fun watch. 608-321-1670. Rattle through a couple calls here before our break. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
This would be Tim from Sparta.
Tim from Sparta. Now, good evening, Tim. How are you, young man?
I haven't been that for 40 years. Anyway, my friend.
Yes.
I just wanted to call in briefly and say, everybody that is dismissing the Rams as a real threat are fools. Because you look at their receiving core, we all know that Stafford can sling the ball. But now that Puka is back and Kupp is back, who are you going to guard? I mean,
neither.
Their defense looks like it's rounding into shape. I don't know. Has Puka reached 100 catches yet this year? And he's gone for a couple of games. And Kupp the same. Those guys will kill you, and they would shred what little cornerback help we have in our back end. So anybody that thinks that the Rams is just going to be a cakewalk, they got another thing coming, as my mother used to say.
Yeah, and that O-line is playing better. Our boy Steve Avila, friend of the show, is playing really well. I like to see that as much as I don't want them to knock out my Packers. And they can run the ball with Kyron Williams, too. Now, Jeff Affley, for all of the frustrations we've had with this defense the last couple of weeks, and I mostly think it's because they don't have Jair. Like, they can only do so much on the back end and coverage. And now with Cooper, I mean, the difference that Cooper made last night versus the last two games was huge as well, protecting kind of up the spine, right, the middle of the field. But they've stopped the run, Tim. Like, they're a top 10 rushing defense right now. And if they can maintain that and just be good enough at the other things, and their front four can continue to improve, like, this can work. This can play. Like, the Seattle couldn't run the ball on him, and neither could Miami, neither could San Francisco. Like, this run defense is real right now.
No, I think you're absolutely right. The thing that they've got to do is, I don't know, at this late stage of the game, if they could make a trade or something, but if they don't have anybody else on the back end, they'll get to the playoffs, but they won't go far. Because in the playoffs, you're going to run into everybody that's got two quality receivers, a decent tight end, and a running back that can run.
Yeah.
And if we don't have the cornerbacks that can cover Stokes, he's faster than me, but marginally at this point.
Yeah.
So it's good luck on the back end, but if the front end improves like it has the last little bit, I think we have a chance. So I'll leave you. I'll let you go. And as always, go Pack, go. And the Bears still suck.
Yeah, and those are the two important things we live by. I'm interested to see what the Bears do tonight. I mean, they quit last week against San Francisco. I picked them to cover. I thought they were going to cover or even beat San Francisco last weekend. I'm obviously an idiot, but I don't know how this week I could turn around and think it's going to be any better for the Bears. Like, why would I? Now, your theory about the corner, look, most teams don't have good corners. Most teams are like, we got one guy we like and one guy that we think we can win with him. There's not many NFL teams who are like, we have 3 corners that we love. So I think the difference between where the Packers are now and where most contending teams are, I don't think they're as far behind as most, but God, they need Jair. If they can get Jair, you can make it work with Nixon and Valentine, maybe a little Stokes. There's something that they still like about Stokes. I don't know. But if Jair's in there, they're really pretty close because there's not a lot of teams that have 3 or 4 corners. If you have one that you love and another that you like, that's a good place to be. They're not that far off. They just got to get Jair back out there. One more call, then we're going to take a break. It to Eric Baranczyk, 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
This is Sal and Stanley.
What's up, Sal? Thank you for listening in Stanley. Hell yeah. What's going on?
No, thanks for taking my call, Grant. LaFleur was catching a lot of heat last night from all the Twitter experts there about being too conservative, kicking field goals and that sort of thing. But I mean, the last 2 field goals changed it from a 2-score to a 3-score game.
Yeah.
And with Seattle not really being an offensive juggernaut, I mean, I guess I'm kind of confused because Campbell's too aggressive, LaFleur's too conservative. I mean, is it just a straight down the line where whatever the analytics say, that's what goes? The analytics don't know that Seattle's backup quarterback is in the game. The analytics don't know, so much. That's what I have a problem with, is there's a possible way to account for every variable. So how can we say that was 37% the good call and 63% the bad call? That's bunk to me.
No, and I agree, Sal. I'm glad that you brought this up because this is something that I should probably talk about. We mentioned the challenges, the timeout usage we could talk about as well. But the 4th down decisions, I just saw a lot of complaints last night on Twitter. It's the internet, so take that for whatever it's worth. And Sal, I appreciate the call. I saw a lot of complaints last night. It's like, Matt LaFleur's a coward. He hasn't been gutsy enough this year. It's like, okay, well, in this moment right now, I don't really care about the rest of the year. I don't think tonight's 4th down decisions need to reflect what's already happened. Like, so we're going to go for it on 4th down tonight because we haven't gone for enough 4th downs yet this year. I almost exclusively prefer going for it on 4th down. I think it's most of the time a good idea. Not all the time, but most of the time it's a good idea. Last night, I don't know that he needed to go for 4th down. The only reason that he needed to go for 4th downs last night was to prove that he's a man. And I don't need Matt LaFleur to prove anything last night. I just need them to win the game, and they did comfortably. So keeping a 2-score game, a 3-score game, it's good with me. It's good with me. And Matt LaFleur hasn't gone for it a ton on 4th down this year. He also hasn't had a ton of reason to go for it on 4th down. Sometimes the situations just don't really present themselves. And, Sal, to your point, well, Dan Campbell's too aggressive, Matt LaFleur's too conservative. Yeah, now you're starting to get it. We just like to complain. That's what it is. We just like to complain. And then when the Packers did go for it and they got stuffed, it's like, well, as Tony said, where's the creativity? It's like, so they got under center and gave it to their best running back. If they hadn't done those things and gotten stuffed, we would have been begging for them to have done those things. We just like to complain. That's kind of where this starts and ends for me. About play calling, about 4th down decision making. We just like to complain. They won by 17, right? If that game was closer against a better team, well, then maybe I'd be more prone to have these conversations, but they're not necessary today. Let's take a break. 3 minutes. We'll come back with Eric Baranczyk, Green Bay Press-Gazette.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Yeah, no, that is definitely something that we've focused on all week. We've talked about all week is starting fast. You know, something that the week before we didn't do a good enough job on. So it was definitely something that we focused on, and I think we did a great job of coming out fast, putting up some touchdowns early, and defense doing a great job getting the ball back for us. But that's when we're at our best: is start fast, getting the ball, put up points, and go from there.
That's Jordan Love last night saying, "Hey, great start. Set the tone for the game." That's when we're at our best, when we're setting the tone early and we can really jump out to a lead. I agree. I would have loved one more touchdown. They had an opportunity. Dobbs was open. Love thought he was going in. Dobbs broke out. That's tough luck. Later on in the game, I don't want to ascribe all of their offensive struggles in the second half to bad luck, but it's like Jaden Reed falls down, perfect play call, perfect throw, and he fought, just got hung up a couple of times on offense, not able to maybe slam the door and score 40, but the defense played really well. And I still think, and maybe we can start there with our next guest, Eric Baranczyk, the Green Bay Press-Gazette. Is that their best win of the year, Eric? I think so. And it's not like they have a long list of amazing contending teams that they've knocked off, but I think that's when, that win's just about as impressive as any other, right?
It's about as good as it gets for right now.
Yeah.
I think you're right there. They just had a 4-game win streak in which the Seattle defense has been playing pretty good. And, to drop, with the last touchdown is what it is. But, it would have been nice to pick up another touchdown there in the third quarter or the end of the second quarter. But, what are you going to do? It was, I thought it was a decently played football game against a good opponent, a quality opponent.
Yeah, a quality, and that have been playing really well and with a lot of confidence too, and at home in a place that's really difficult to go play. When you and Pete went through the film and sifted through things, did you see anything different that Seattle was doing in the second half that maybe gave Matt LaFleur issues? Because I thought at the beginning, Matt LaFleur was just flexing his years of experience on Mike McDonald, the rookie head coach, a little bit. So what changed in the second half? Did Seattle get a beat on them? Were there adjustments, or did the Packers start, executing more poorly? What changed after halftime that you saw?
Good point. Good question. And what you saw was in the first half, the Packers were able to gash them a little bit. And in the second half, they changed their scheme up a little bit. So they were doing a lot more pinching with their front four and moving their front fours on the snap, because the Packers offensive line was just taking it to them, and they didn't have a whole lot of answers there. So the only thing that they, when you start throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks, what started to stick a little bit for Seattle was getting their D-line moving a little bit. And that kind of caught them off guard, and they got a little bit more penetration that way than they did straight up. But what that does is that, and you saw it happen, when they started doing that, then they started, you saw the second half, they handed the ball off to Reed a few more times. And that takes away your outside pursuits when your linemen are just, pinching and plugging up holes up front.
And that obviously jumped out to you on the film. And I remember Collinsworth mentioning that as well. When Seattle's trying to, I would just think of it, my dumb brain, it's a run blitz. They're going all out to play these gaps. And then when you get a guy on the boundary, as long as Wicks throws a good block, and I trust him to, or Watson, you're not going to have a chain of defenders coming from the inside because they were so dedicated to try to come up and get Jacobs. I wanted to ask you about the outside stuff because it seemed like, I don't know if it was in the third quarter or early in the fourth, Matt LaFleur just started calling all of the jet sweeps and all of the outside runs. That seems to be sometimes an all or nothing proposition with LaFleur. He's either going to call a bunch of them or he's going to call none of them. What jumps out to him? What does he see on tape for him to go, it's time to really attack the edges and to do it in a lot of these games over and over again when he decides to go to it?
Well, that's a great point you just made there. And one of the things is how they play their front seven. If they're going to play their front seven at 4 yards, and have everybody diving inside, that's going to take away the defense's opportunity to pursue. So your first initial, you're either going to run those jet sweeps or real wide outside zones or screens. Those are plays that you use to get them out of that and get those guys back, loosened up a little bit in the second level. And that's exactly what was happening with Seattle was stuffing things up front with the way they were playing. So Green Bay countered it by going outside, and Seattle kind of thumbed their nose and said, you know what, we'll take our chances with your jet sweeps and screen passes, but we're not going to let you just run the ball north and south and get 3-4 yards a clip on us.
Do you think Jordan Love got a little, I don't want to say overwhelmed. It seems like in the second half, there wasn't a whole lot of him 3-step drop, 5-step drop, plant, throw. There was a lot of dancing around and then getting out on the boundary. I would have liked his performance to be a little simpler and a little bit more surgical with that lead in the third quarter. I thought he was sometimes trying to do too much, but that just could be how I see it. How did you see it when you watched the film?
I saw the way that they were attacking the middle part of the field in the passing game was challenging based upon how the Seahawks were playing.
Okay.
And then, the other thing is they had some bad luck. Christian Watson drops one. Reed falls down. Those were plays that third down plays that turn into keep the chains moving. So, and that's been one of the things that's plagued the Packers all season long is sometimes the receivers seem to play with ping pong paddles and, weird things happening out there. You go back to last week's game and, the Packers go ahead by touchdown. If Jaden Reed doesn't fall down coming out of the backfield, he gets tripped up by a lineman. There's nobody there. That's 7. Yep. Anyway, so Love makes a good reaction there and throws it over to Jacobs. And there's a, inexplicable, silly, flag thrown for running into, for an illegal pick play, which wasn't a pick play. It wasn't designed. It happened. So there's just a couple of those bugaboos that just seem to be popping up at bad times, third downs primarily. So some of those things, hopefully take care of themselves as we work out of the preseason or the regular season here and get into the postseason. So, but I think they got enough talent on offense. But some of it, honestly, I think it's just age. There's a lot of 2 and 3 year receivers and running backs and stuff that just got to get a little bit more savvy, especially if they're going to try and blitz 10. Some of those blitz hot reads have got to start showing up a little bit faster.
I think so. Yeah. Eric Baranczyk is here, and you can catch him doing the film breakdowns with Pete Doherty, the Green Bay Press Gazette. I wanted to ask you just kind of big picture about the running game, because it seems like every other week I cut a piece of audio from ESPN or for a big-time football show where they're talking about nobody's more creative than the Packers with some of their run looks. Dan Orlovsky a couple weeks ago called Matt LaFleur diabolical in the way he schemed things up. They're always twisting and faking, and they're going outside. Wait, they're going inside. Like, I'm really impressed, and I know Bill doesn't like it because they're not under center so often. I don't understand football well enough to realize, pistol versus under center, but they certainly give the opponent a lot of looks. What jumped out to you specifically from this game, and creative run looks or maybe looks where you're like, actually, it would have been better to maybe do something else? Just talk about the running game from last night.
Well, so that's the other thing too. Is in the second half, the running game kind of got bogged down because their linemen were basically, you get to a situation like this and you say, guys, we got to throw everything out the window. You tell your D lineman, go get the handoff.
Yeah.
And so what that did is, primarily Kraft was having a hard time because he's a devastating blocker. So if you watch carefully, a lot of times Kraft is instead of using a pulling lineman, they use him as a pulling lineman to go block. And there were times where he got hung up because a defensive end or a defensive tackle squirted through and kind of hung it up a little bit. But one of the things that makes their offense go is their ability. Their offensive linemen are pretty athletic, and so they pull a bunch of guys either, sometimes they do the worst one for linebackers is they do a bunch of fake pulls. So they'll send Kraft, let's say they send him left and you thinking, well, that's where the ball is going. And then it squirts through on an inside zone. And that's tough for a linebacker because you're going with the flow, you're reading your flow, and also, whoops, shoot, they're coming right at me. How is this happening? So when I saw last night was some of the stuff when they were trying to pull to the edge or do inside pulls, it was with their linemen and tight end, it kind of got clogged up. And where I thought they might have gotten a little bit more yardage or a little bit more traction on their tires was they just kept running up the gut and just run A gap, B gap stuff. And just, if they're going to move, let them move. And we're going to try to run where they are. And they had some success with that. But I think, if you're going to get the Packers out of their run game is you got to get deep penetration with your linemen. And not every team has guys like the Seahawks have. I mean, they're the outside linebacker, outside, defensive end group is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Williams is pretty good too. So not every team has guys like that. Like, for instance, you look at Philadelphia.
They do.
Those are guys where you can utilize some more pulling and stuff because those two guys up front, they ain't going to get much penetration, but they ain't going to move anywhere either. I mean, you've got to dedicate two guys to them. So it's all a little bit sometimes fun in games how the game goes. And I don't at any point in the game I never felt like, oh, this is getting close. It was just, a couple of mistakes here and there that were individual mistakes, dropping the ball, things like that. I think Love showed a lot of poise. And there was a couple of passes, the throw to Dobbs at the end of the game there in the end zone, and then the other one to Christian Watson, where you throw the ball a yard up, yard outside of him, 3-4 feet off the ground where he's only going to get it, and they completed it. So that's the kind of poise that you want to see out of your quarterback, especially a guy like Love who's just fifth year in. So, those things don't just happen. And that's the difference between a thrower and a quarterback. Because everybody on an NFL roster can throw the football. There's no question about it. It's whether or not you can play quarterback. And that's the point that Jordan Love has demonstrated. Even though he has some mistakes in there, they all do, but he can play quarterback, which is a difference in just being a thrower of the football.
That throw to Watson reminded me of Rodgers and Nelson in 2014, when it's like you got to cover all 100 yards sideline to sideline, but then you also have to cover like a yard and a half out of bounds too, because they utilized that space. That throw was, I just had to laugh. Lastly, tell me about Edgerrin Cooper. I almost forgot. I know we've been doing all offensive stuff, but he had to just jump off the film when you rewatch this game, right?
Oh my God. Well, the beautiful thing about him is he brings forth. He's a multi-dimensional linebacker.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is he's a 3-down linebacker. You can put him in there and he can drop back into coverage or even play man-to-man coverage. He has some wherewithal for spacing there, and that's really important. That's an instinctual thing that sometimes is learned, and sometimes guys just don't get it. But you got to have that sense of where the holes are, where they're trying to attack you, and being able to have the wherewithal and maturity to be able to sit down, because it's really easy at that second level when you see guys running around to just flow with flow rather than this is my hole that I got to cover. And you saw that he almost had a pick in the third quarter there when there was a wide receiver, and then he got another pick later in the game. And if you watched him play zone against the tight end, was really good. Didn't get too far upfield, didn't get over his skis. He settled down on the holes. Very impressive. And then on that, he can blitz he can rush the quarterback. He's got enough length and leverage and enough explosion at the point where he can, be effective rushing the quarterback. And you can send backers. And so if you look back at the game, if anyone's interested, and you see when they blitzed Eric Wilson or McDuffie, there were times where, they get to the line of scrimmage and they just seem to get there a step or two late. But Edgerrin Cooper has that gear, and he just hits that gear, and he gets there. Doesn't have to. You don't have to sack the quarterback, and sometimes it's almost better that you don't sack him because then they throw the ball up and you get a pick.
Yeah, especially Geno Smith, who's we saw that a couple times last night. He'll hoist it up in the air for you.
Yeah, and you can go get them ones. And so the important thing to remember with him is you got those two things, being able to cover, but then he's also a really tough point of attack downhill linebacker. And I think that, he's really going to be someone that Packer fans are going to like for a long time. And he's someone that's developed and has got it. He took over the second half of that ball game when Quay Walker went out. And I think, boy, he's a guy that they got to keep on the field as much as possible. And surround him with a little bit of veteran talent there. And boy, I really like some of the things that he can do.
You know what I liked about that answer, Eric, is I asked you, hey, what jumped off the film about Cooper? And you talked for 2 minutes about how he positioned correctly and how he read. You didn't mention, oh my God, he's so fast or he's so strong. And he is, and you hinted at that too. But the first comment that you made was about how he's seemingly learned the game and better understood spacing and timing. And that gets me going, because it's one thing to have a guy who's just lightning fast and has all the traits. It's another to have that guy with the head on his shoulders, especially as a rookie who's even missed time, to be able to, put it all together. That's exciting.
Yeah, there was a play in the third quarter where he had a slant coming from the slot, and he settled down and he baited it.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a rookie linebacker and baited a throw. And linebackers are not known for having super great hands. And if it would have stuck in his face mask, he probably would have had a better chance of catching it. But I mean, it's the way it is. But that's a great play. Had he caught that ball, the game's over, and the Packers are going away on it. But now it's third down. But that's the kind of thing that is really easy for a linebacker on a slant like that to take a step or two towards the sideline, because you got to remember the guy's running at you, and you instinctively want to go to him, and then all of a sudden he catches that ball, and now I got a tackle, or I missed the tackle because I'm out of position. He settled down really nice in his zone, waited for it to get to him, and then he baited him. So, and you saw that when he was playing, they would run a couple of quick turnarounds to Fant, which is a deadly play. If you have a linebacker that is too aggressive to the run fake,
sure,
or doesn't have wherewithal where he needs to be in the zone. So really good stuff that I liked about that. And, the way he can bend and get after the quarterback is, he's an all around 3-down linebacker that is very rare.
And I think he's just getting started. I appreciate it, Eric. I kept you for one or two more questions longer, but I don't think we'd be talking about last night's game if we didn't talk about Edgerrin Cooper, who did a little bit of everything. So thank you.
For
thank
sure.
you.
And you know what? Listen, you guys Pete and I have a podcast. It's called After Further Review. It usually comes out on Tuesday, or we post it on Twitter as well, or X, I guess it is now, where we go into a little bit more depth about some of these things. And some people find it interesting because it's not just a fluffy, oh, you had a great game. We talk about what makes a lineman a good lineman, or a quarterback, receiver, whatever. So if you guys are interested in that, I appreciate you, give us a listen. And as always, Grant, thanks for having me on. I really enjoy the show with you guys.
I enjoy having you on, Eric, and fun to talk about a win, of course. Have a good day, man. Thank you. We'll talk next week.
Yeah, you too.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Kind of one of those things where if you've been so good for so long, you don't get it right. Right, with Matt LaFleur, who I believe maybe outside of Jim Harbaugh probably has the highest winning record as an active coach. It's actually historically good at this point. But you're looking at him, you're like, well, they were good last year. Well, then maybe you should have given it to him last year. Well, it was good, but like when you step back and consider the job he's done transitioning this roster, incredibly young roster, and then of course shepherding in a new quarterback and dealing with the situation of Rodgers wanting out. I mean, it is really remarkable. And again, I think he's such a brilliant offensive play caller. I would put him up there with anyone in the league right now. So
he was able to do
he
with
should be
Malik.
talked about in that category. But it's always like the most improved coach, the most improved team.
Most improved. But then again, like Dan Campbell didn't get it last year.
Right.
So it's a little.
And
it's
now
a
he
little,
won't because he was good before
I
before.
know. It's a little
silly.
dicey.
So I clipped that audio. That's from Up and Adams, I believe. That's Kay Adams' show, but Mina Kimes was on as a guest. And I clipped that because I'm like, oh, they're complimenting Matt LaFleur. I can use this as a bumper on the show. And then the last 10 seconds, I could actually use this as ammo for why the NFL Coach of the Year is like this impossible award to give out. You know what I mean? Like the NBA MVP, sometimes it can be tricky, but for the most part, we can nail that thing down. The NFL MVP, for the most part, we can nail that down. Cy Young, right? Manager of the Year in baseball. It's tricky, but not impossible. Like normally we can, the Heisman, for example, Travis Hunter. Most of these awards, we got a pretty good idea of who deserves it, who should be given to. The NFL Coach of the Year, like how do you even start? How do you even start? Should it be given to a coach that's wildly outperforming expectations, even if their record isn't, incredible? Like Dan Quinn. There are a couple games over 500, but you could make the case for Dan Quinn. You could make the case for Dan Campbell because they've won so many games. What about Sean McDermott? Sean McDermott's kind of a 1 foot in each camp. I think he's overperformed expectations, but also his team is unbelievable, and they're going to win their division. So, like he's got the excellent record, but also overperforming expectations. And then you got Kevin O'Connell. What about Kevin O'Connell? His record isn't as good as the Lions, but he's doing it with Sam Darnold. Ooh. But what about Matt LaFleur? They're right there. What if they surpass the Vikings? And also, he won 3 games with Malik Willis. Mike McDonald, rookie head coach. It's impossible. It's an impossible award to give away. So that was firstly, I was going to use that audio to, it's topical. It's about the Packers. But then at the end, and I'll play this part one more time, it just further highlights how impossible the NBA or the NFL Coach of the Year is.
I would put him up there with anyone in the league right now. So
he was able to
he should be talked about in that category. But it's always like the most improved coach, the most improved team.
Most improved. But then again, Dan Campbell didn't get it last year.
Right.
So it's a little.
And now he won't because he was good before
I
before.
know. It's a little
silly.
dicey.
It's very dicey. I don't know how we're ever supposed to give any of these coaches the award. You can't get it right away because you haven't proven it. But then once you start proving it, it's like, you were good last year too. So where's the, it's like if you combined the MVP and the most improved player in the NBA into one. It's like, how do you even, you got to be good, but you can't be good with a team that's good because then you won't get credit. And you can't be good for the second or the third or the fourth year in a row because, what'd you do? You just maintain from the previous year. I don't really care if Matt LaFleur gets credit and gets mentioned and is in the conversation for Coach of the Year. I brought this up on Bill's show earlier, and I'll be quick here because we got to get to the Monday mailbag. But I just don't. The in the conversation thing does nothing for me. I remember Devin Booker a couple of years ago, Ryan Russillo making this point. So, Devin Booker's not the MVP, but he should be in the conversation. What does that mean? Okay, so you want me to come on the radio? You want someone to go on a podcast? Be like, hey, everyone, Devin Booker might not be the MVP, but he's like a confident 5 right now. He's like in 5th. What does that do for anybody? That's not right now, Matt LaFleur, I'd have him behind Dan Campbell. I'd have him behind Kevin O'Connell. Maybe somewhere similar with Dan Quinn, Sean McDermott. Who's in the conversation? Okay, well, he's probably 5th. Is that worthwhile? Does that satiate you, Packers fans? I don't really think it matters. What an impossible award to give away. Sorry to do a quick segment here, but we went a little long with Eric, which I think was excellent material. Just my opinion. Maybe you disagreed, and if you disagree, sorry. We're going to do the Monday mailbag when we come back, and I want to make sure we have a couple minutes. Plus, wrapping up hour number 6 of radio, this is where my words start to turn into pudding. So we should take a break and get this thing to the finish line before this really turns into a mess. The Monday mailbag, if you have any questions, sports or otherwise related, please, grantbills21@gmail.com. I will address them as long as they are appropriate for the radio. We'll do that next. We'll wrap up the show.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Because the mail never stops.
Charles, I'll be writing to you.
Ah, she's got mail. That's the name of the book.
That's it!
Honey. There's never a let up. It's relentless. Every day it piles up more and more and more. And you gotta get it up. And the more you get out, the more it keeps coming in.
The Monday Mailbag. Made possible by your emails, your questions. GrantBills21@gmail.com. If you're like, shoot, I forgot to send it. Well, send it real quick in the next minute or two. I'll still get to it. They can be sports related. They can be not sports related. I actually think it's better for the show if they're not sports related, but to each their own. Let's start with Peter. Emails in. He's in Lake Wissota, Chippewa Falls area. Hey, come to the show. Come to the live show. Princeton Valley next Thursday night, the 26th. Bring some friends, Peter. He says, since we are less than 10 days from Christmas, what was your favorite Christmas present you got from Santa when you were a kid? Oh, that's interesting, Peter. 2 gifts come to mind. I think one was from Santa. I think another one was from my grandpa at the time. One was the video game for the Wii console, Mario Super Sluggers. Outstanding game. Ball knowers remember that game. Ball knowers might still play that game. I wonder if they've made new versions of that for Switch. I'll have to look. But I remember getting that. That was life-changing, truly. And I remember getting a spring-loaded blue Anakin Skywalker lightsaber that kicked a lot of ass. Really helped me graduate in my social circles. There were those with lightsabers and those without. And that thing wasn't one of the cheapo ones. That thing lit up. Lights and everything. Good question, Peter. Thank you. Michael says, hi, Grant. Love the show. I love when emails start with that. Hi, Grant. Love the show. Great win last night. Why the hell does LaFleur keep throwing challenge flags and losing? I believe he's 0-6 now. Is it an inexperience or is he getting bad info for some guy upstairs? I think it's a little bit of both. Look, that challenge last night didn't kill him. I think you get to operate under different rules when you're leading by multiple scores. Like, I'm a believer, man, use those timeouts when you're up 3 scores. Use those timeouts to keep the ball, to extend the drive. Don't stick those timeouts in your back pocket. For what? If you're up 3 scores, ideally, you never need them late in the game anyways. So use them to prolong your lead. The challenge is, I don't know. I think it's LaFleur is bad at it, and also he's getting bad information. You don't go 0-6 by just one. I think there's multiple actors at play, and they all stink. So you should get a new challenge guy. And I think it's so easy for us when we're at home to think like, oh, look, it's so obvious. Yeah, because we're watching on TV. I think some guy up in a booth somewhere sees like one blurry angle and is like, do it. The operation behind the scenes for an NFL team, I think, is much more difficult. But in any event, they need to get better at it. because they stink at it. And they really stink at it when I see like half of a replay at home and I'm like, that's a bad challenge. Like when I instantly know it's a bad challenge, that's a bad challenge. Rob, who I believe listens in lacrosse on WKTY, says, hi, Grant. In honor of finals week at UWL, what was your most enjoyable class and which one was your least enjoyable? Oh, for CST. Well, that's mighty specific. I think a lot of those professors are still there. I don't have strong memories of any bad classes. UWL is an awesome school. I would recommend that you would go there. If you're like, should I go to UW? Yes, you should. Awesome school. Is it UW-Madison in size and in scale? No. But my professors were all awesome. Very good curriculum, challenging. And I loved my program. Everyone was really personable. Met a lot of good people in my classes. I'll give you a class that's not a CST class. I took a cultural anthropology class because I had to. I think it was cultural anthropology. But the spin that this woman put on it, the professor was from Boston. I can't remember her name. Big hair, was a former athlete, tall woman. She played basketball in college. And it was like a cultural anthropology class. But she focused on healthcare. Really, really educational. Looked at how other countries and cultures handle healthcare. She had done field studies, although I believe we don't use the term field study anymore. There's another word. There's a more politically correct word that we use now, and I can't remember which it was. But she had done studies in Haiti and in Central America, and we spend a lot of money in the United States on healthcare for not very good care. And I'm sure some of you are like, good job, Grant. You went to college and learned something that we all know. But that was a good class. Least favorite class? I don't know. I had a Spanish class that I took 4 days a week, and the professor spoke no English from the first day. I learned a ton, made very strong connections with my classmates, but I feared for my life every day I went into that class. She would ask you a question in Spanish, then she'd snap it and point at you. It's like, I don't even know. Did we start class? I don't know what you're saying. By the end of the semester, you get a good grasp, but man, at the beginning. Jacob, final email. This is a good question. Survivor winner pick. Look, if Rachel doesn't win, something went very wrong. She might just F around and win the immunity challenge and not even get to fire. Look, Teeny and Sam and everyone got mad and Sue. They're like, why are Genevieve and Rachel acting like they're going to win? I don't know. Win one immunity challenge, Sam. Teeny, get a clue for once in the show. Like, yeah, you guys don't have to like it, but Rachel's dusting all of you. So unless she gets eliminated before the final three, like, she's got it. We'll talk more about this and more tomorrow 4. Thanks for listening.